Hello everyone, welcome back to EveKit. A few days ago we pushed out a new release, and there's a pretty cool feature in this release that we thought it was worth making a short video about. So the new feature is something called the DataSource API. So the DataSource API is an API defined by the Google Charts and Visualization library, and what it does is it specifies a protocol that Google Charts and other products like Google Sheets can use to query and pull data. And one of the nice things about it is it has a query language that looks kind of like SQL. It's not quite as capable as SQL, but it lets you do things like select only certain columns and filter and do aggregations and ordering and so on. And so in this video, I'll show you how to get that going. If you've never seen the Charts API before, Google, most people have. Here's the web page. So they have numerous chart types, and all of these pull from data sources. So anybody who implements the data source protocol can use one of these charts. It can be pulled in, which is kind of nice. And you can also do similar tricks in Google Sheets, which I'll show you as well. They make it really easy to implement the data source protocol. They provide a Java servlet, and so all we've done is taken that servlet and added it on so that it will pull EveKit data out and deliver it. Okay, so back to the site here. So first of all, the data source API is part of our API section, and we've reorganized things a little bit for this release. So if you pop that down, now each API type has its own section. So character incorporation data is up in the Eve account API section. The static data export now has its own section. We've also added a reference data section. So this is for the Eve and map XML API calls. I believe we only support the Eve calls at the moment, but map should be coming in the next release. And then finally, the data source API has its own section. So let's go there and take a look at that. So right now, we expose the data source API for capsuleers, corporations, and reference data. And for capsuleers and corporations, we're only exposing wallet calls at the moment. We'll add more over time, but these were the first ones that we really wanted to do. And then for the reference data, we're exposing the skill tree, and I'll show you how that works. That's kind of cool as well. So going back to the capsuleer data, if we go and we pull up the, let's say the journal latest call, on top here you see the usual form that you would see if you tried one of the other API sections. And so you need to select a character key. So let's select a demo account here. And you'll get your access key and access hash as usual. And then there's this new area called query. And this is where you can type in a query in the data source query language to try it out. This part down here is a URL that's being built out of all of the arguments in the form. And when you're done, if you want, you can just copy this out and cut and paste it into a browser window, and it'll render the same thing. And then finally, at the bottom here, at the call result, we'll show you a preview of what happens when you do things up here. So if you don't do anything, if you don't type any query, it'll just select everything it can find. So let's go ahead and click Submit. And then after a second, in the demo area here, you'll see the journal list. It happens to be, looks like it's ordered decreasing by date. And it has all of the fields in each journal entry. And so, as I said, if you take this URL here and just copy it and then put it in a browser window, then you'll get basically the same thing. So it's a real convenient way to just pull up an HTML table if that's what you want to do. Okay, so back to the site here. So just to show you what's going on in the URL itself here, so it's got the same URL that's coming from the top here, and then it's putting in your access key and your access hash, and then it has this special notation here, TQX equals out : HTML. This is data source API language. It basically means output an HTML file. We'll change this later when we pull it into a Google Sheet. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so now what you can do is you can type in a query, and let's say let's pull out the balance by date, for example. So what you do is you can type select date and balance, and let's order that by date in ascending order. Now the only thing special I had to do here is I had to use backticks for date, and that's because date is a reserved word in the query language. if you click on this link right here, you'll go straight to the query language syntax, and it'll show you any other restricted words and so on. Okay, so if you click submit on that, basically you get the same thing, but now everything starts from the earliest entry we have, and then the balance looks like it's going down, which isn't great. Okay, so you can play around with other variants of queries here, but anything you type in here is automatically put into this URL at the bottom. So again, if you just want to play around with a little bit to make a query that does what you want it to do, then the minimum you can do is just copy out this query at the bottom, and you're good to go. Okay, so now what you can do with this is now you can embed this type of link or this link plus a query into either your own web pages using the Google Charts API or into, let's say, a sheet or something else. Or you can just use it to experiment and look at your data. So I have two examples here. The first one, I'll show you what this looks like when you plop it into a Google chart. So I think I did this plot, in fact. If you plot that, you get something like this. So here's the wallet balance over time for that demo account. So as you can see, it's going down. And this is just the Google chart generated off of the same data I just showed. And the source code for this is pulled from the Google Charts documentation page, which I just showed a little while ago. So basically it has some boilerplate, and then you choose the type of chart you want, the line chart, and then the URL. So you've got everything in the same URL I just showed you before, but all I have now are just the access key and the access hash. I've taken out the TQX and the query. The query I've embedded separately, so this looks exactly the same as what I had before, and then gave it a title, and that's basically it. And so like I said, you can find this same example on the Google Charts page. Now I mentioned the other data source that we've exposed besides Wallet is skill tree, and so what this is this is the EveXML API call for the skill tree exposed in such a way that you can easily plot this as an org chart. So what you do, for example, is if you pass in an ID, some skill ID, then it will show you that skill plus all of its dependencies. And so what you can do with that is you can make a view that kind of looks like something like an EveMon or something like that. So when I did, let's see, I forget which one I did. Let's see real quick. So I did, okay, so here's the Caldera Strategic Cruiser skill ID, and then when I call this data source, it automatically pulls out all the dependencies and organizes them into a chart. And so again, this is just a different type of Google chart. So here this time I've selected org chart as the type chart, and the data source URL looks kind of similar. It has an access key and an access hash. The one thing that's new is the ID for the skill here, and then I put a title on it, and that's basically it. So you can do some kind of cool things with the API like that. And so over time, we'll add more of these and so on. So the last thing I'm going to show you real quick, let me go back and pull up our wallet again. I'm going to show you how to pull this into a Google Sheet. So here we are again. We've got our query that pulls balance by date, and let's see. Let's make it slightly more interesting. Let's do an aggregation just to show you how that works. So let me go back to what we've got before. So I'll just pull up the original query again. So this time, let's do let's sum over our ref type IDs, so we have some idea of what sorts of things we're doing in the journal. So that's a select ref type ID, and let's sum the amount, and we'll group by ref type ID. And say submit. Okay, not very exciting for this account. So now what you can do is if you want to pull this into a Google chart, or sorry, a Google sheet, you can take this URL and use the import data. And so I'll show you how to do that. So let's copy this whole thing out. And it looks like it's pretty long, went right off the screen. Let's get it all in here. Okay, and then I've got a blank sheet here. So what you can do to pull this in is you can say import, in this case we want data, because data accepts, data accepts a CSV format, and that's what we want. So we use data, and then I'll paste the link. And then the one thing we need to do to make this CSV is change this out here from HTML to CSV. And everything else is the same. I've still got the access key, the access hash, and the select statement as well. And then hit enter, and in a minute it pulls up the same thing we had before. Let's fix the formatting here. So those aren't dates. Those are in fact just plain numbers. Okay, so now from this data, you can make a chart or whatever you want, but basically it's just an import data statement with exactly the URL that I copied, but changing the HTML to CSV, and you're good to go, and that's basically it. Okay, so that's the demo of data sources. It's a pretty cool feature. We're pretty excited about it. Lets you do lots of interesting things, and the query syntax alone makes it much easier to pull in data. You don't have to cycle through a whole list of JSON objects or something like that. And we've already used this in some of our charts as well. So that's it. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot.